Welcome to another webinar from CPG Matters. I'm your host, John Karolefski. Thank you for joining us. Our topic today is how AI simplifies your marketing mix decisions. But before we begin, we have some housekeeping items. Attendees are in a listen only mode, but this conference is interactive. If you have questions, please type them in the chat box in the lower right of your screen. We'll answer them along the way or at the end as time allows. Now, this webinar is being recorded. All attendees will receive a link to the webinar later this week. Joining me now are Bradley Keefer and Joshua Lucas of Keen Decision Systems. Bradley, the podium is yours.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. And thank you all for the participants who are listening live, as well as those who are listening to this recording. I appreciate you all coming in to listen to a conversation between myself, Bradley Keefer, the Chief Revenue Officer at Keen Decision Systems, and Josh Lucas, who is our head of product here at Keen. Josh is extremely passionate about AI, and a lot of the work that he's doing within the Keen platform is really enabling faster decision making for marketers. So at the end of the day, like Keen's vision is to empower marketers to make smarter, faster, and bolder decisions, utilizing all of your advertising dollars in a singular model, breaking down the silos and allowing agencies and brands to come up with strategic plans to be able to actually influence their P&L. One of the challenges, though, is bringing in data, right? Anytime anybody we talk to about like marketing mix modeling, and there's a lot of hype around it, are really talking about, like, oh man, the data lift there is atrocious, all the way through like, well, you can create fast insights and you can create plans, but like most marketing mix models don't answer the so what. And then it's like, well, Keen is a predictive and prescriptive tool that optimizes for future plans. But the challenge with it is I don't have a data scientist on my team to help me interpret this information. And this is like all opportunities for AI to be able to come in and look at it from the perspective of how do we collect data faster? How do we tag data? How do we actually enable faster decisions? So a lot of what we're going to be exploring here is how we utilize AI within Keen system and how AI is really disrupting marketing mix and really the future that Keen envisions, which is a headless MarTech stack, where I can actually automate decisions from end to end, from interpretation through execution, and then layer in, some of the large language models, machine learning models, to really disrupt this, MarTech space. And that's really what Keen's vision is here. So, I'd love to learn a little bit more. So, Josh, thanks for coming in here as we start to talk about the evolution of marketing mix and how AI is disrupting it. So I really just want to get your perspective as we kick off on, how has marketing evolved?
Oh, thanks, Brad. Yeah, I mean, as you said, this is something I'm very passionate with about. In marketing, the challenge has just gotten harder and harder as time has gone on. Traditionally, you had gut-based decisions, right? Very limited reporting, very limited data. You would make buys and sort of see what happened, and not much in the terms of ROIs or any modeling. And then come the digital age, and you start to get some attribution, and everybody falls just in love with attribution. And then a couple years later, everybody finds out maybe last click attribution isn't the best. All the while, you are getting more and more channels during this period that you have to make buys in, that you have to keep track of. And then we start to hit on the multi-touch attribution and all of this attribution talk. I'll argue throughout the course of today and until I'm blue in the face is going after the wrong goal, right? All of this is looking towards, as you mentioned, an ROI that really raises the so what question. And this so what question gets so much more complex given all of the data streams that are coming. And now for our CPG fans out there, we have a lot of these retail media networks that are coming up. So the bigger you are there, the more of these you'll have to contend with. Everybody who has an audience is going to start creating some of these retail media networks. So you're going to have growing complexity. And if you're trying at the end of the day to get unified ROIs on everything across all 150 channels you have, that's a really big question of, so what do you do with that information? And that's originally why I came to Keen very early on. Was our founder John Busbus. I met with him and he said, oh, we have a button. You push the button and we tell you the so what. We tell you how we're not anchored in your past. We can look at your past, evaluate it, and tell you that bright future. So what I'm really excited to talk about today is not only the value prop that we've had for over a decade of using one type of AI to answer that so what question, but how this new type of AI with generative AI can be layered on for marketers to better interact with these systems and to better engage in marketing mix, better have their whole funnel work in unison.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I see on the client side, leading our revenue function here. It's really about like, what are the big things that people are talking about? It's like in marketing, everybody's talking about like Gen AI for the sake of content creation. But it's like content creation for what? For what placement? Like, right? So at the end of the day, it's like I'm going to place bets from an ad perspective on different channels. And the question now is like, there's so many channels. Like I was at Cannes last week, and United Airlines launching a retail media network, and we were talking to like the team over at Wawa, which is like a convenience store gas station for those of you who aren't familiar, not on the East Coast. And it's like, so to your point, like there's channels popping up everywhere where I should throw ad dollars because there's people that engage with it, therefore I could spend, right? That seems to be the sentiment, and it's not wrong, but it's not going to go away. In fact, it's going to get worse, right? So part of this benefit, and a lot of traditional companies are looking at it and saying, I've got data all over the place, right? And that problem in and of itself creates another issue. So it's not just I've got too many decisions to make from an investment perspective because I've got 45 marketing channels. And one of the things that I hear from CFOs is like, am I in too many channels at this point? Like I can't keep up with this. And I have to keep throwing people and bodies and more agency resources to the point where it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm spending $10 million across 50 different channels, but the cost to support 50 channels is too high. Therefore, like Gen AI is going to, reduce my content creation. But it's like, what about the execution, right? What about the actual ad dollar placement? What about the audience level? So like, there's just so many decisions that need to be made today that like AI is more than just content creation, right? It's more than just like, do I have the right story? But AI can also help you like craft the right strategy. And that's what we're focused on today. And really, at the end of the day, there's kind of like two buckets here, and I'd love to get your perspective. There's kind of two buckets around the decisioning model that I think AI can come into play. One is, in order to build an effective decision model or predictive model, you have to have good data coming into it, but you also have to be able to actually execute off of it. Because it's one thing to say like Keen has a great model that can build something, but how do you use AI to interpret, to make a decision? So, how are you thinking about using AI today, and where do you think the market's going to continue to go if we, overhaul our MarTech stacks with more AI integration?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's been cool to see the evolution in how Gen AI is now empowering. And we'll get into some differences in AI technologies, but what we've been employing for past decade is a type of machine learning that takes in, like you say, the sea of data that you have and makes sense of it, and what to do next. But being here for a long time, it's been hard to communicate that message, right? It's been hard to get someone who is maybe a brand manager, who doesn't want to get in the weeds of data science to really understand what these models mean, because we've had these models for a long time, right? You can think about Gen 1 of the digital age, and why Facebook and TikTok are so addictive is because of these machine learning models. So we've had them. They are just not the most natural language thing to interact with, right? And then in comes Gen AI, which can completely look at, configure, understand with a little bit of training everything that's going on. And so what we see and what we're doing at Keen is really bridging that gap in terms of usability, where it's less of a, hey, let me call a consultant to see what these coefficients mean, and more of a, I don't really understand that. Let me click that button and I will get the story generated for what I'm looking at, or let me put in the story exactly that I want and get that generated. And what I see is more and more of these complex tools that were normally behind the consultant paywall, or the very big tech paywall, are now going to have a lot more natural language interfacing. So at the very start of your workflow, you're just really asking a question, and everything downstream is really being configured by these. So when, yes, Gen AI, great for content generation. We're using it some in analysis, but also configuration, I think is a great place it can be used, because it can really understand its options, understand your question, and then understand the best path to take you programmatically in the application. So from an M standpoint, got AI in one bucket that we've had for a long time to just take all this data and make sense of it. But now the Gen AI is really helping us bridge the gap of helping people understand these real meanings inside their data.
Yes, let's double click on that well, we use the question that just came into the chat. So just a reminder for those, there is an open chat area here. So if we kind of bring this to life a little bit, right? There's a question around, how do we use a model like this to understand the interaction or intersection between retail media planning and trade marketing negotiation? How are AI tools able to solve this, right? And from my perspective, there's a framing of the model. So one thing that's been challenging in the industry in the past is marketing mix modeling is really it's just media. Like a lot of times, it's really just media information. Where Keen's approach is, how do we put trade? How do we put shopper? How do we put media? How do we put digital? How do we put influencer all into a single unified model? And what we're able to do is utilizing a Bayesian technique and Keen's proprietary marketing elasticity engine, which is really different, because when folks hear like Bayesian regression modeling, it's like, oh, that means I need lots of training data. And that's actually one of our value props. Like, our IP is the fact that we've already trained the model with a marketing elasticity engine that is where the core of our machine learning, to Josh's point, like, we built the company based off of a machine learning based model that utilizes natural language processing to identify different channels. Like, that's our IP that differentiates us from traditional marketing mix models that are just regression models and things like that. So it really is in the core. But when we think about retail media, what you're asking is like, am I overspending in trade? Do I throw those dollars to media? And I can say for 95% of the brands we work with, yes, you're overspending on trade, right? Because you're trying to drive units, especially in this environment. I'm trying to drive units in lieu of, in this case, when your budgets are being challenged, building a brand. Well, how do you drive units while building a brand in order to hit scalable, profitable, business? And that's really what we're focused on in the predictive part of our model. So let's make it more tactical. So I talked a little theoretical. So Josh, as you think about making this more tactical, like, how would Keen's portfolio model capability optimize and look at the interactions and the intersection between retail media and trade?
Yeah, so it's a beautiful algo. Glad we're going this deep. Everything you're right on the Bayesian is true, in that it really enables you with very limited data to make really good decisions, right? Because if you have limited data, it's going to lean more heavily on our collective insights tailored to your industry, in the size of your business. But if we were to click down on how this actually goes down in practice, say you have a portfolio, a retail media portfolio. We're able to connect, say, a Kroger shopper marketing to an Amazon shopper marketing to a Harris Teeter shopper marketing. So you can see the cross effects of any of these marketings on the other, as well as the impact within each store. So you could do this across any of your retail tactics, trade too. And the beautiful thing about the system is you get a unified measurement of bottom line profit that can be driven by incrementally spending more or less in any of these retailer buckets, retailer tactics. And with this, what I like to think of a Rosetta Stone of how your marketing works across retailers, across maybe new retailers, across trade, you can get an optimized forecast of, well, given how we know this is the equation of your business, given all the cross effects between retailers, given your opportunities over here, based on this Rosetta Stone, this is how you should invest to get the most profit overall for your business. Now, of course, we can tailor that to your objective. So if you want to hit a revenue growth number, we can tell you the optimal route to get there. If you want to just see how much profit you can get from all these retailers individually, we can get you there as well. But think of it as a maximization problem once we do all this machine learning to get that Rosetta Stone of your business.
Yeah, and just to simplify it, at the end of the day, too, this portfolio model for a large coffee company that we work with, we were able to measure the interaction between master brand marketing, so your traditional television and out of home, and then really utilize the model to understand, Amazon has an impact, but Amazon has an impact on Amazon as well as an impact on offline, right? If 70% of people start their new product search on Amazon and then go buy it at Kroger, I want to be able to take that credit, right? And there's not a lot of tools out there that are able to answer this question. There's a lot of implied inference, but it's not always the right correlation causation type of difference. So that's where we actually utilize some of the machine learning that we've built, to talk about how do we actually build a model that understands that interaction? How do we build a model that understands the interaction between the channels as well as the interaction of the channel's performance to revenue? And that's again the core of what we've done. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, and just to double click on that point, when we talk about complexity, if you like when I came to Keen, I was at an agency managing a pretty big portfolio, but the decisions were not like this and they were very complex, right? And now it is so fragmented and you have to think about these interaction effects. Like if you have, as you say, 50 different programs, and you have to think about how they all relate to each other, cross pollinate each other, how they have long term versus short term impacts, and how that all impacts your bottom line. Like, this is not something for a human to do, right? Like, come to Keen, come to Keen. We can help you, but just know, like, this is a problem beyond what we can compute. Like, we must use machine learning for these numbers, right? So let machine learning, like this Bayesian MMM approach, do all the number optimization. This is what computers are made for, is ingesting thousands, millions, billions of data points, and then giving you an appropriate Rosetta Stone to then optimize your business. So we use Bayesian. It allows you to have very little data and rely on all of the insights we've gathered over time, or as you have a lot of data, learn and update as you go on. But fundamentally, you must use technology as a marketer in today's age to get an accurate representation of what all these platforms mean. And do not trust the platforms. It's like the fox guarding the hen house, right? They have too much invested in. What you ultimately need is a governor of all the platforms to get this holistic view of how everything works together if you hope to really maximize your marketing outcomes.
Yeah, so machine learning really does enable, brands of all size to actually engage with models for the first time. That's the other differentiator that really becomes unlocked here with utilizing, complex models like Keen is talking about. But we built it and delivered it in a software application. Like this also goes along with it. It's not just like, is the AI good? Is the AI good enough, and is it delivered in a platform that is usable? So one of the interesting things, if you think about the growth of ChatGPT, right? there's a lot of people out there asking, like, what is the validity of the model, right? They just start prompting away. So what Keen is really focused on is like, how do we bring this complex Bayesian modeling, machine learning based modeling, and deliver it in a way where you can actually prompt it in a way that says, you know, based off of the fact that I'm a $50 million beverage brand in a category that's declining by 3% and a cost per environment that's increasing by 20%, what is the ideal mix of my spend? And what is the impact of the timing of my spend as well? And again, when you're now, like, you could ask those questions before when it was, well, do I put it into print versus radio versus TV? But now you have so many channels and sub channels and nuances. Like, is Ibotta the same as Fetch? No, but they play in a similar category. It's just like asking right now, there's a lot of questions around, do I buy Amazon streaming TV at 3 times the price from a cost per perspective, or do I buy it through traditional CTV? And when I buy it, am I buying premium at a higher cost, right? All of these things can be modeled in very easy, prompting solutions through software. And the value is that I can deliver really big models to small brands. I mean, we work with brands that are spending $200,000 a year in working dollars. Machine learning and modeling capability delivered in a software application like a chat GPT prompting experience is changing who can have access to this type of information, right? At the end of the day, Keen is very much focused on bringing that large brand experience in a very simplified, easy to consume, type of medium. So it's not about like you keeping up with the pace, it's about you setting the pace, right? Because there's so many brands that are just trying to catch up to the speed of decision making. Keen is actually allowing brands through AI to really focus on setting the pace versus trying to keep up with the pace. And so if we shift gears a little bit there as well, Josh, AI in the world today, what they actually mean is large language models. So how does a tool, if we're talking about machine learning, that's not the shiny new toy, right? The shiny new toy is the large language model. So, but the problem is that large language models can't do math. And if you're going in and prompting ChatGPT, like I was talking about, to help build a plan, it's not going to be good, right? So let's talk a little bit about some of that analysis and how we think about using LLMs within a platform like Keen.
Yeah, no, that's I love this rabbit hole. So large language models are exactly what they sound like. They are large models of language. So when you hear in the news about the newest training model, they are just taking as many words as possible, or converting audio and video to words in order to run a prediction algorithm where they predict the next word. And what they found is at hyperscale, this resembles intelligence, right? When we prompt it and it sends stuff back, and it is really good for things like coding, or helping you write, or reading back, say, an ad set options, and helping you configure things. But it is terrible, terrible, terrible at math and data processing. So it's pretty laughable when things come out that, LLMs alone, the chat GPTs, or could displace any of this analysis. Because what we do with every new model that comes out, or the premium models that come out, is we test them to see how good they are at math. Because I would really love it if they were great at math. It would make our job way easier at integrating them into the system. But they just aren't very good at math. And so these are basic things, right? This isn't, any calculus. This is, you have a file, find the maximum value, right? Find the year over year return. These are very, very simple things that they are very poor at. So they should not be in charge of math. You have the machine learning models be in charge of math. but these large language models you can handle with personalization. And I want to double tap something, Brad, you were saying about prompting. And I love ChatGPT, not gonna lie. But I also love the commentary there that it is not a great user experience and user interface from the standpoint of, for a lot of people, have no idea what to do, right? I talk to a lot of friends that I think are very intelligent and they've never really played with it because on the surface, you don't understand the multitudes that are there. So what we've done in the Keen platform is your whole experience is essentially giving context to the model. So you reference the brand size, your brand size, what factors you add, what descriptions you add, what industry you're in. All of these you can think of just how an LLM would take all that context in to personalize its output. We take in to personalize your model too, along with the Bayesian regression analysis. So that's really where LLMs start to come into the mix, is taking this natural language that people are comfortable inputting, describing things, talking about things, and then bringing them in. So that's how we do it at Keen. But there's also so many more things out in the marketing space that are ripe for the taking. So when you think about just the configuration of anything, mine should go to LLMs, right? For, say, Facebook, you have only so many targeting options, only so many demographic options. But there are a lot, right? I mean, it's 1,000. It's too much to hold in one's brain at one time. But you can upload all of those, build a little bot LLM there. That, with that combined with the media format type you're going with, and maybe your audience you're going with, can help create either optimized text or optimized media on a recurrent basis. So think about all of the settings, right? There are so many settings that you have to go through in your any online channel or any buying platform. And that is where all the money is, right? Is knowing how to have the best settings, test settings, iterate on settings, get the best settings for your audience, test new audiences. And again, back to the baseline problem, we are just iterating in how many channels there are. So you're going to get more and more and more of these settings. You're probably going to have more and more agencies, right? It becomes a problem just from like managing it in-house, much less, agencies are just going to have difficulties too with all of these channels. So what we really see is a future where this is more and more programmatically optimized over time because it's just ripe to be optimized. So in our platform, we are doing more and more to have you be able to just configure with your words, and we see that as the natural progression throughout the marketing ecosystem. Is just more and more. I'm going to type in my goal, and all of these complex things will be configured. Act as if you are a digital marketing expert, right? So I think it's very exciting. Obviously, for brands, it's a bit scary because there's the loss of control. But for those willing to take the dive and go after it, there is going to be a high upside.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with Sam Altman from OpenAI the other day, and his prediction is that sometime within the next 5 years, you're going to see a 10-person billion-dollar valued company if someone learns how to use the AI solutions enough and puts enough of the AI solutions together. And I mean, so from a human perspective, it's a little bit scary for some of the conversations that we have with with marketers. Like, these companies that we work with are very saturated with people. And essentially what we're talking about is like efficiency that's created through machines, and you'll need less people because the people in these roles become more of the I'm going to protect the guardrails and set the guardrails, rather than like, I'm going to click this button, then I'm going to hand it to that person who's going to click that button, then I'm going to go up, right? So at the end of the day, we're seeing a really strong shift on the brand side to owning more of the end-to-end decisioning. So we're seeing brands really trend toward building a data lake and normalizing using AI to map data together to make better decisions, faster decisions. Well, the challenge for the agency world is like, well, agencies seem to be becoming more software aggregators. So at the end of the day, it's like, well, what's the role? Like, who owns the decision? That's really the question I think that the industry needs to ask itself is who owns the data, who owns the process, and who owns the decision. And the decision, in our opinion, should be owned by the person who's accountable to the outcome. So, and the outcome in this case is P&L, right? Outcome is not reach. Outcome is not ROAS. Outcome is not frequency, right? And these are all words that the industry is confused with performance. But in Keen's opinion, there's a level of accountability that comes into play here. And, like looking at the future from Keen's like hot take perspective is there is a future in the next 1 to 3 years where we build a headless SmartTech stack that pulls the data in, that allows the prompts to say, because essentially Keen is providing a marketing elasticity engine, which is essentially a pre-built prompt system, where I know a typical performance for a retailer who has X number of stores at X size. And how do I know that? Because I built a large database of information that has that data, that all I'm doing then is using the brand's data to push and pull that prior, right? And at the end of the day, I'm building a Monte Carlo based predictive simulation that optimizes the marketing and media spend by week. Well, there's no reason that we couldn't take APIs, layer AI in to be able to actually clean the data, structure the data to feed it into a decision engine like Keen that produces both measurement and predictive outcomes, right? At the end of the day, an output from Keen is a weekly buying plan by marketing channel down to a level of campaign execution. Well, why couldn't we then API that data out into an automated bidding and buying system? This is Josh's point around programmatic. Like, well, we're not that far away from the APIs moving the data in and out holistically. And we're not that far away from the machines being able to actually measure, optimize, and build plans. Right. So the question here becomes is like, with utilizing AI, why so many people? Like, who's accountable to it? And what's the right prompt? So at the end of the day, what Josh is showing here on this slide is really tied to if you put in your plan, which is I have a revenue target of $500 million and I've got these 15 marketing channels, Keen can suggest, hey, you should actually have 17. Here's the 2 to add because we have data to suggest the 2 to add, to then optimizing it with some basic information around like audience optimization with some basic information around execution. Then you're layering in your Gen AI, creative and personalized content. If these systems come together, the future really does enable an AI based headless MarTech stack. And this is really what Keen is aiming toward is like, how do we become this decision engine in a world that's looking at measurement? So the world is shifting away from measurement as the rear view mirror drives the strategy to why don't we let the predictive engine drive the strategy? Because that's what you're doing when you put a prompt into ChatGPT, right? Is you're just trusting the output and things like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity here from a headless MarTech stacks. And like, so Josh, anything that you'd build on that or, what's your hot take as far as the future is concerned?
Oh, no. I mean, my hot take here is like if you have your marketing mix is the key in the system, right? It is the governor. I am lucky enough to, have that admin access to build whatever I want at Keen. But once you have that, the rest you can do today, right? The rest is, you know, uh, a good, you could have a proof of concept within a week, right?
Mhm.
Of building something like this. Production grade, different story. But there's likely those of you thinking, it's not ready on the ad side. True. I will give you that. It needs work. But like, think about where we are headed. We are Moore's law, right? Technology is on an exponential in terms of processing. These AIs are on an exponential in terms of their size and their abilities. So we have two exponentials going on. Like, that they are so good as they are right now should flabbergast you of how they will be in 2 years, right? So yes, maybe this isn't ready for prime time today for medium and big brands to really let the reins go over. And the bigger you are, the slower you will be to adopt a technology like this. But for simple things like text ads, do this all day. There's so many campaigns that are already working like this, or features inside of your premier ad buying platforms like a Google, like a Meta. But the real juice is being able to optimize these continuously. So in this funnel, you have your marketing mix, give you these prescriptive allocations by channel, by campaign. Those budgets feed into your campaign targeting. So your campaigns across all your channels, across your empires of retailers, and different types of ad buying platforms, those get API'd in all of their budgets so you don't overspend. But then those are also optimized, right? Those your AI will know these are your options for the demographic or the psychographic profiles of the end users, and then be able to test. What do I mean by that? I mean, every 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how much data you're getting, you can take your top campaigns and keep those running, and then take out your bottom, create new settings with new campaign targeting, new ads generated, bring them back up. And the cycle just optimizes itself. You don't have to touch it.
Okay, we had some questions come in, Josh and Brad. This one here says, does Keen have its own omni-channel data source, or do you need your clients to send you their omni-channel data?
Yeah, so Keen has a proprietary, database of information. So we already have what the industry would refer to as norms, but it's not the static database that usually we talk about from a norms perspective. But yeah, Keen has a perspective that looks at, what is the norm for a category, or, to feed into the regression model for, Amazon and Walmart. But it's not just, Amazon and Walmart. It is Amazon search, Amazon display, Amazon streaming TV, Amazon deal of the day versus like from a retail media perspective, it breaks it all down. For omni-channel data, we have partnerships as well. So we have a partnership with a company called Crisp Retail, who has the APIs built out to store level information. So if you're buying, Walmart system or Amazon system or Kroger system, they have the APIs built. So Keen is able to go pull that data. So as long as you subscribe to it as a brand, we can have access to it into our platform. So that's on the sales side. And we also have partnerships with like Nielsen IQ and Circana and Spins from a POS perspective on that side. And then from a media spend side, if it's Amazon, we access their marketing mix portal where we pull the data out directly. And then all we're doing is we're pulling your time series data, and it's interacting with our normative data. So the Bayesian regression essentially is using our data combined with your data to push and pull. So at the end of the day, like, can I build you a model without any data? For sure. It's going to be more directional in nature. It's going to be tied to the tags that Josh talked about earlier, because we built a prompting system where you can tell it, I am a $20 million per year brand with TDPs of X at a category that we define as Y. So if you put the right prompts in, I can give you a perspective of like the norms of how much am I typically supposed to spend in what channels. But if you want it to be customized to your brand, for sure. You then push and pull that using the time series data. So Keen doesn't own data because it's your data, but Keen has built APIs and partnerships to go pull that data in a very easy, seamless way.
Okay, another question that came in. What do you envision as the next major advancement in AI that will further revolutionize the marketing mix?
Josh, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the next wave of models. So right now it's estimated there's like 12 to 18 months until we think of it as GPT-5 grade models, right? The next era. But think about the jump in capabilities between 3 and 4 were amazing. I know not a lot of people use 3, but think about their 10x better. So think about if AI were to get 10x better across answering questions, doing math, generating images, doing video, then we are in for a much more capable agent to do everything we just showed you in that cycle. So, like I said, today, some people might laugh at that being a possibility, but once the next generation is out in probably about a year, it's just an arms race between the biggest names in the game. So it's going to happen, and when it happens, the ability for it to generate and act as an agent here is going to be pretty plug and play.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'm most
let's get
excited.
ready
I'm most
for it.
excited about. Yeah, I'm most excited about the opportunity to evolve into, being able to interact. So like we've actually already tested V1 of the ability for you to have conversation live with the computer agent that we've started to train. So it's this idea of like, what does a consultant do? The consultant is someone you can have conversation with. Well, we're already testing the voice conversation, and those are in V1. So I'm most excited around like, how can I actually have a conversation with someone? To be able to go mine a database, but use voice and not just use data and not just use a software prompt. Like we can already do that today, but it's adding that voice interpretation and actually having a dialogue with an AI. That's what I'm most excited about.
Okay. Here's a question that came in regarding the part of your talk about large language models. What are the primary limitations of using large language models for data analytics, and how do you mitigate those limitations?
Yeah, I mean, just don't do it. I think would be my initial advice. Do it knowing you need to check what it is doing. Because in the best of worlds, a large language model is going to write itself some code to then execute it, but also think it is predicting this code for the first time. So it's not guaranteed to work. It will give you an answer. It will be serious about its answer. But unless you have really trained it to write the right sort of code, or you're really good at prompting, it can really lead you astray. Just because it can't do it without writing code, and it's subject to a lot of errors when it does write its code. So I would just say, generally speaking, the data analytics capabilities have been completely overblown. If you need a graph or something like that, yeah, it can do it. But in terms of it being able to consistently get you the right result, you're better off just going in Excel. It's going to take you a lot of shots to get it.
Okay, question that just came in. Can an automated model be constructed that will let brands align retail media spending with the ACV product distribution of a brand, as opposed to limiting ad buys to a very large retail media networks with the largest audiences?
Yeah, basic answer there is yes. I mean, that's what we do every day with our CPG brands, is be able to actually pull in the data. And again, it goes back to that portfolio. If I want to build a total MULO model, I might have total MULO sales, and total MULO is like, Circana MULO plus Amazon plus my D2C to equal total revenue. And then I break down all my marketing channels. And marketing channels are going to be, here's TV. TV breaks down into CTV versus linear, then into 30s versus 60s. But retail media does the same thing. I'm going to break it down by retailer and then the tactic within the retail media network. And we're also pulling in, percent ACV, any promo we're using for trade optimization. Because the question people are asking right now is, what is the cost and impact of driving distribution versus the cost and impact of spending more in marketing and then spending more in media? And so again, from a holistic P&L perspective, Keen's models are looking at the relationship between spending and marketing. So when I work with small brands, I'm trying to say I want my marketing to respond or to have an outcome metric that is tied to TDPs. So from distribution growth, because I'm trying to allow my marketing to drive distribution, or I'm going to try to look at the relationship between distribution growth trade spend, and the relationship to revenue. So again, like we do this every day for brands. And then the other common one on the side is like, we've convinced ourselves that there's a correlation between household penetration and revenue. And, that's the other thing that comes up here. That's not always true, right? And it's not a one-to-one like brands think it is. So we distract ourselves with, I got to grow households and households will lead to more revenue. That's not always true, right? Like I can drive more households and they're not buyers. So that often comes up in that conversation as well for a lot of our brands. But, I answered your question, from a basic perspective all the way through the follow-up questions that typically come in relation to the same conversation.
Okay, one more question. In what ways does focusing on data-driven decision-making rather than solely on ROI analysis improve marketing outcomes and operational efficiency?
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's a ton of wasted spend, like that's happening right now, and very inefficient spend. We've convinced ourselves in the spending by silo, and I'm going to go optimize my Google for the ROAS. I'm going to go optimize my Meta for the ROAS, and I'm going to go fight my trade team for their overspending. And I can't figure out why, when I'm spending all of my money in trade to lower the price and my margin is getting worse, and I'm spending my money there in lieu of building a brand, I can't figure out why in this environment my brand is not profitable. And it's like, well, I've got an idea. It's because the math doesn't work, right? But there's no solutions out there that allow the math to come together. We operate in silos as if these things don't have interaction, as if these things don't work together. And that's where Keen is able to look at this holistic approach from a predictive, because it's not just about media. We're also then bringing in how it's interacting with price, how it's interacting with, relative price to the category, how it's interacting with inflation, right? Because sometimes these things aren't in your control. So that's how shifting from, I used my ROI $1.80 on Meta to make a decision and my ROI got worse. Brands will complain about that. And it's like, yeah, but your ROI got worse because there's a response curve. The more you spend, the less efficient the last dollar is. So the question you should be asking is, $1.80 is good, but how much more could I spend profitably? What's that future sweet spot that allows me to drive toward long-term profitability? That's the difference between allowing the rear view mirror to drive the strategy versus allowing the strategic predictive analysis to drive the strategy.
Yeah, all of marketing analytics is just in love with ROI. And if you're out there making your decisions primarily off of ROI, just please talk to us. Like, let us show you a far more optimal and way easier path.
Okay, excellent. That's all the questions that have come in. I want to thank you both. That was an outstanding presentation, and the evidence for that are the great questions that came in. So if you want to continue the dialogue with Josh and Brad, there's their emails on the screen. I want to thank you both for a great presentation and thank everyone for attending. Have a great day.